Okay, good morning, everyone. Once again, we are in week 6, and this is our fifth lecture for this unit, Foreign Policy in PNG, PG428. We've been looking at talking about PNG's foreign policy, the historical details featured in many of our discussions with Mr. Ako so far. So for today, we will look at a significant event in PNG's foreign policy history, and that is the Foreign Policy Review of 1979. Mr. Ako once again has joined us. We are very happy with his time and his commitment to help us understand PNG's foreign policy and provide a platform where other citizens can also use the information that we are sharing with them and use it to their own betterment to help understand what foreign policy is and the importance of foreign policy. So without further delay, I also welcome our viewers on Facebook and those of you in our Zoom meeting room and those who will be viewing via YouTube. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Ako, please, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Aguirre. Good morning, everyone. I'll share now. Oops, still getting it wrong. Sorry. Try again. Six. Yes. There we go. Okay. So our topic today is on foreign policy, the 1979 Foreign Policy Review. So we'll go straight into it. By 1978, after the first ever general elections held in 77, the general feeling in government was that the time had come to maybe relook at the friends to all enemy to none foreign policy and start charting a new way forward. So after all, we were already into our third year as an independent country. Our prime minister and ministers were now traveling frequently throughout the world promoting the universalism mantra. And we were now ready to proactively participate in a world whose geopolitical power plays remain foreign to us all. So the foreign policy review, was it by choice? So how was the review carried out? Well, like we found out from last week's Q&A, we also had a lecture with Professor Ted Wolf maybe 2 years ago, where Mr. Aguirre, which Mr. Aguirre organized, and we heard from the man himself how the government established its review team to carry out this exercise. As we can understand, we had limited capacity then, which made it more challenging by the fact that the 5 national goals and directive principles were not supported by any coherent framework until much later on in our history. So the years between 1975 and 1980 were ones of orientation in the international community with the establishment of diplomatic relations with a record 60 countries, in addition to membership of international organizations. So PNG also ratified a number of agreements as part of this engagement. On the domestic front, the urban-rural drift continued, and its ensuing consequences of social issues started troubling the government. Further, party politics within the greater government system and within cabinet started encroaching into the core of government, adding additional strains on the implementation of economic development agendas, not plans that were in place. You see, by then we only had a high-level overview of how we wanted our economic development agenda to look like. So the infant PNG public and foreign service was not at a position to add value to these opportunities, despite their valiant efforts to do so. However, it would be Papua New Guinea's relations with its immediate neighbors, in particular Australia, which covered Torres Straits, and Indonesia, the Irian Jaya issue, that would prompt the review of its initial foreign policy. So this would not be the only factors leading up to the review. Political instability within government would also prompt the shift towards a more selective engagement approach, as opposed to being friends to all and enemy to none. See, as such, the agreements which PNG signed with Indonesia in February 1982, regulating the navigation of the Fly River, was an integral requirement in the planned development of the Oak Teddy mine in Western Province, which would come later on. These agreements gave substance to a commitment made earlier by the Indonesian President Suharto, which he said to cooperate whenever possible in ensuring the successful establishment and operation of the Oak Teddy mining projects. Okay. These agreements, while giving greater leverage to Indonesia, also provided Port Moresby or Port Moresby PNG rather, with the greater incentive to see that Article 8 of the basic agreement is given full effect. That the border area should not be allowed to be used as a sanctuary, staging area, bases, or for illegal activities against the other. So for Indonesia, this meant continued active cooperation with PNG to suppress the OPM activities. The real challenge to Indonesia's sovereignty was not military. See, it was the continued political existence of the OPM, which had invoked sympathy and popular support among the mainland nations of Papua New Guinea and other Pacific islands. It symbolized the worst kind of Indonesian fear, the disintegration of the republic. So those who might sympathize with the OPM aspiration became enemies of the Indonesian Republic. Papua New Guinea's posture with respect to the OPM was the touchstone. Around this period, anti-Indonesian outbursts in PNG fueled the growing bitterness, and Indonesia warned of possible breakdown in relations. Border flare-ups continued, with Indonesia denying that these incursions were taking place. So by the time of the first PNG-Indonesian summit meeting in January 1977, it was already about Indonesia's hot pursuit and PNG's granting of permissive residence to Irian Jaya refugees. On the PNG side, it was the question of integrity of its territory, while on the Indonesian side, it was the issue of rebel sanctuaries. So Indonesia's tough line up to crossing the border if necessary had the intense effect of neutralizing possible PNG support to the insurgents. The Somali government quickly adapted to the real situation, promising that PNG territory would not be used as a basis of anti-Indonesian activities. Now, although Indonesia welcomed the emergence of PNG as a sovereign and equal member of the international community and continued to pledge its friendship and cooperation, the Somali government realistically recognized and accepted as a basis of its own policy making the underlying fears of conscience of its neighbor, implicitly preparing to accede to the special Indonesian relations. So throughout 1978 and 1979, the Somali government stiffened its own internal policing of the border, exiled OPM leaders, repatriated some illegal border crossers, and maintained tighter control of the political activities of permissive residents, and otherwise demonstrated the political reality of the situation despite domestic pressures to accept border crossers and to tweak the status quo. So we are leading up to we are looking at the factors behind why the review of the foreign policy happened. So these are some of them. So now this is the picture was taken during the special MSG meeting held in PNG early in 2018. Both Ambassador Pomaliu and I were invited to attend, and here we are in the first photograph, posing with our Indonesian APEC colleagues, Ambassador Desra Percaya in yellow, and who was in the Indonesian APEC senior official, and his deputy Andres Sirega. who became senior official in 2018. And the other picture is with the West Papuan leader. So you can see how the Indonesians were playing it. So when they have this MSG meeting, and then they send the APEC team members as part of the delegation, knowing very well that PNG was hosting APEC, so that they need to be part of our policy undertaking. Because when I was talking about APEC, we required support, and Indonesia was there to support us. So that's how diplomacy is played in a realistic level. Okay, so we talked about Serbia last week, and how the Torres Strait issue was part and parcel, or the critical issue between PNG-Australia relations. So, like we said, Serbia's most pressing task was on how to satisfactorily conclude the unfinished business from before independence of the border within Australia to the south across the Torres Strait. So this was a matter of great importance to the young nation of Papua New Guinea, which was determining borders being a fundamental requirement of defining the nation itself. The border cut across traditional fishing and trading grounds, and legally excluding many Papuans from their ancestral heritage. So while the people of the Papuan coast were concerned over traditional rights of access to the marine and seabed resources, the inhabitants of the Torres Strait Islands had shown their commitment to remaining within Australia. So this allowed the compromise that eventually was embodied in the treaty, where multiple boundaries were established to govern the seabed and fisheries, as well as the islands, with the intentions of satisfying all parties. In making the agreement on Daru Island on the 2nd of November 1978 by Serbia, Olewale and his Australian counterpart, Andrew Peacock, that became the cornerstone of one of the cornerstones of the PNG-Australia relations. The China influence. See, the Somali government had reacted to these engulfing events by adopting an economic development plan that emphasized rural development and decentralization to slow down and curb this urban drift and move towards self-sufficiency, at least on food production. So these background facts provided some explanation on Prime Minister Somali's trip to China. See, he had indicated earlier on to diversifying PNG's source of aid, trade, and foreign investment. China offered enticing prospects, particularly in the areas of inexpensive consumer goods, such as fabric. So by the end of 1976, PNG's imports from China had quadrupled, while China bought copper, timber, and cocoa. About 85% of PNG's population still lived and continue to live in the rural areas up to this day, since then and up to now, and they live most in small self-sufficient villages. So, however, since 1966, when less than 5% of the people lived in urban areas in 1976, urban growth had shot up to over 20% annually. This was accompanied by the familiar patterns of unemployment, crimes, quarter settlement. Added to this, the urban population had developed new dietary and general consumption habits for imported Western goods. So by Somari's visit to China, Prime Minister Somari also became the first head of state after the death of Chairman Mao to be received by Chairman Mao's successor, His Excellency Huo Guofeng. And he was given a truly regal welcome and hosted generously. While this was happening, you see, it was making President Suharto across the border very uneasy, because he charged that the two most powerful secessionist movements in PNG were under communist influence, and that he wouldn't hesitate dealing with any communist movement within or without that posed a threat to Indonesia's security. So he was referring to Josephina Baija's Papua Besena and Bougainville. Now, regardless of the accuracy of Suharto's information, the critical point remained that PNG was in the middle of an encircling set of Western dominant countries. To the west was Indonesia, To the east, the Solomon Islands. To the south, Australia. And to the northeast, the U.S. trusted territories of Micronesia. Geopolitically, while these national perimeters were not determinative of the choice of foreign policy, they suggested Papua New Guinea's experimentations with policies disturbing or provocating its neighbors. The relations with China being one classical example. You see, this was why Papua New Guinea's promulgation of its foreign policy to the UN General Assembly on 20 September 1976 was purposely to balance these threats. However, there remained economically compromising factors. Firstly, PNG's annual budget couldn't be met from its own tax base. An outright Australian grant was required to cover the 45 to 50% annual deficit. In March 1976, Australia announced a massive 3-year aid package of over $1 billion. Secondly, the increase in Japanese investments in copper and timber imports. And thirdly, capital investments in all sectors, ranging from the large copper operations to supermarkets, motels, and banks, were primarily Australian-owned. Other observers have suggested that Prime Minister Somare's active courtship of China was not a defiance of his country's dependency relationship with its Western sponsors, but rather a tactic intended on improving his sagging popularity in the face of the upcoming 1977 general elections. The coalition government which he led had suffered setbacks. So we are now going into some of the reasons behind the foreign policy review and now domestic politics. The leader of one of the three coalition parties had publicly called Prime Minister Somare a dictator, which precipitated a prolonged open coalition struggle. Now, although he was able to hold on to a majority in parliament, he alienated a number of Highlands leaders who had withdrawn their support or sympathies from the government. Further, his fight against a 15 to 20% inflation rate, even unemployment, and increased industrial strikes severely tarnished his image and popularity. So this is a bilateral meeting between PNG and China on the margins of APEC. It's a senior official meeting. Ambassador Pomali sitting on the left, and His Excellency Tanjian sitting on the right. So you see, APEC advances bilateral engagements at all its four levels. Like I said, this is a senior official level bilateral meeting, and it covers discussing agendas from everything of national and mutual interest to both economies. So while you go and discuss economic related matters in the APEC plenary meetings, at the bilateral meetings, you can discuss anything that concerns of mutual interest at all levels, at the working group level, all the way up to the senior officer level, to the minister, even up to the leaders level. Okay. So APEC offers that opportunity for PNG to meet on a level playing field with its bilateral partners. Now, domestic politics and the 1977 general elections. You see, the usual 4-year term of the House of Assembly was extended to 5 years, shortly before independence. So pushing back elections to mid-1977. So under 900 candidates contested the elections. I don't know how many contests in modern day elections, but there was 900 who contested the 1977 elections. The elections, and 3 women were elected to parliament. Okay. When we're talking about bilateral relations with our neighbors who talk about gender equality, and they keep on maintaining the fact that we are not electing women into parliament. Note that in the first ever elections, 3 women were elected to parliament. See, Pangu had 30 seats. Pangu won 30 seats and formed government under a coalition with the PPP's 15. Sir Michael Somare and Sir Julius Chen, leaders of these 2 parties, both became prime minister and deputy prime minister respectively. Pangu's Ebiolewale became foreign minister. Teyabal and his United Party of 23 formed the country's first ever opposition. Sir Kingsford Dibela was governor general. So Sir Julius Chen's PPP, as we all know, it's People's Progress Party, was happy to play the referee between Pangu Party and the United Party. Both parties retained a good number of candidates at the first general election. Sir Julius thought that it would be in the best interest of the country to align with Pangu to form the 1977 government. He felt that, say, Prime Minister Somare's leadership he was the best person to lead and unite the new country. And he believed in Prime Minister Somare's leadership, which was founded on the principles of friends to all, enemy to none. Now, the first ever vote of no confidence. Now, the coalition government removed Sir Julius Chen as the country's finance minister. 6 months after the elections to his election, his party, PPP, was further diluted when the key government ministries were split into portfolios. It appeared that they considered PPP and Sir Julius a political trick. So Sir Julius's PPP was marginalized by 1978, just 1 year after the formation of the first coalition government. I think, Ms. Leger, I think we're jumping again here a bit on Sir Julius, but I thought I'd include this also because it would lead to the foreign policy review. So I'll continue. So Sir Julius's PPP thought there was a lack of consultation to key government decisions. His party left the coalition government. They formed and became a minority crossbenchers. Pangu Party and the National Party formed a new coalition government. Sir Julius saw Pangu Party as the right political party to work with PPP at the inception of the country's political independence. But just after 4 years of independence, Pangu Party and Sir Julius's PPP fell apart. Sir Julius said Pangu Party was a party with numbers, but no political guidelines and real implementation machinery. The 1980 vote of no confidence on Prime Minister Somare was the complete turnaround or turning point on PPP, on Pangu PPP relationship. Sir Julius Chen referred to the late Seyamba Kyokuk who was a driving force behind the change that saw him become the prime minister. Sir Julius Chen seemed to hold Seyamba Ki in high esteem, though he thought he was abrupt and reactionary in nature as a Highlander. Understandably, he adored Seyamba Ki because he suggested that they formed a new government. And it happened. Sir Julius became the prime minister during the 1980 vote of no confidence, and the late Yamba Kyokuk became his deputy prime minister and civil aviation minister. By then, you see, the PNGDF had successfully quelled the Vanuatu secessionist movement, and this became one of Prime Minister Chen's achievement. He thought Australia and New Zealand had done nothing to help the cause of Vanuatu, and he resented they did not want to upset the French and British governments. He understood that. So PNG acted solely as a Melanesian brother to capture the main targets and quell the crisis from escalating. The review of the PNG foreign policy. You see, the general guidelines for involvement call for the consolidation and extension of existing relations, independent and constructive cooperation with neighboring countries, and further diversification and development of political significant relations with other countries. Now, although one interpretation has it that the selective engagement term required the identification of enemies as well as friends. The trust was more or less directed towards promoting self-defined real interests. Security was one of them, with Australia's security presence hovering in the background. So during the first year of independence, Australia and PNG publicly stated their mutual desire to maintain and develop the close and cooperative defense relations between their two countries. So this was to include not only matters affecting their common security interests, but an Australian presence in the country to assist the development of the PNGDF. So now it's taking a different turn now. See, diplomacy works in multiple ways, and politically, there were loggerheads. So they said, okay, we have a strong history with the army, and we'll work towards supporting the army by having presence on the ground. Prime Minister Chen's more visible style of leadership was accompanied by an intensive foreign policy the review, which began in 1979, and it continued until December 1981, that the fruits of the lengthy review appeared in the detailed white paper that called for a new foreign structure of active and selective engagement. See, the white paper's emphasis on diversification and development of new relations was particularly highlighted in the discussion of economic links. See, PNG was economically dependent on Australia. PNG foreign policy decision makers continued to rely on Australian-derived information and analysis and counseling. This prompted Prime Minister Chen to set up the NIO, the National Intelligence Organization, to provide independent background for decision making. The 1980 Kumul Force intervention in Vanuatu was Papua New Guinea's assertion of regional leadership in the Pacific. Around this time also, PNG made its bid to join ASEAN in order to bridge the Pacific to Southeast Asia. So with the review, a lot started happening in our international relations with a different perspective, if I can say that. Now, during that period, Papua New Guinea's bilateral relations with ASEAN was limited to Jakarta. The PNG assessing that a common significant interest laid with ASEAN states wasn't justified either economically, socially, culturally, or politically. This link, however, broadened Papua New Guinea's international context and associates, if not loosely, with one of the world's third world regional groupings. PNG also recognized that its special trading arrangement with Australia and New Zealand set it apart from the ASEAN nations with which its exports competed, including its economic development planning and priorities, which remained at variance with those of ASEAN states. See, amidst this intention was also racial tensions due to the presence of a large number of Filipino workers. There was also claims of Russian salvation of PNG by clandestine support to the OPM. The white paper itself envisages that diversification would include devising arrangements for regional development assistance from communist countries. Now, compounding PNG security vulnerability was its lack of defense capability also. The successful Vanuatu expedition was not real measure of its military prowess. This was supported in the white paper, which admitted that its armed forces couldn't be relied upon to maintain independence and security in case of threat. The Chen government's collaboration with Indonesia was not dictated by Australian pressure, but by the reality of power which both Australia and PNG could independently assess. In 1982, Somare's Pangu party won the national elections again, and he was voted in as prime minister. Friendly diplomatic relations ensured with Indonesia, with the signing and exchange of 4 memorandum of agreements, formalizing the Joint Border Committee and giving substantive content to other arrangements derived from the 1979 Basic Agreement on Border Arrangements, which was signed on 16 December, and ratifications exchanges on 6 February 1980, and it came into force on the same day, 6th of Feb. See, interestingly, when I went to do my master's at the UPNG, my sub-thesis for the Master of Strategic Management in 2011 was what I call the Pangasap effect. Pangasap meant the PNG APEC ASEAN partnership effect. So it was basically about how PNG could work towards joining ASEAN, and this involved hosting APEC. So I'm thinking that this should lay the foundation for the eventual write-up of the thesis laid the foundation for the eventual write-up of the operations plan 2018 and 2012, which was eventually endorsed by Cabinet in October 2013 to commence the APEC 2018 planning process. We will also note that, like on the screen, we only have PNG only has observer status, and membership of ASEAN could have been important then. You see, membership of ASEAN could have been important then, but I personally do not see its importance nowadays, simply for the fact that there are 10 ASEAN member states. 7 of those 10 are members of APEC. And PNG is an equal member of APEC with those 7. So what better way to ensure stronger relations in the Southeast Asian region by increasing or enhancing or promoting or advancing bilateral relations with those 7. And on the other side of the scale, you have the ASEAN plus 2, plus 3s, and the Australia, New Zealand membership of those pluses, and the Australia, New Zealand free trade arrangements and agreements with these ASEAN countries. You know, that changes the whole equation of PNG's engagement with ASEAN, because what do we want from ASEAN? That's the question which we should be asking also. What does PNG need from ASEAN that wants it to be a member of that ASEAN? No, you know, when Singapore hosted APEC in 2008, I was in that bilateral with Foreign Minister Abal, with the Singaporean colleague, and the Singaporean colleague told him frankly that Foreign Minister, we in Singapore do not think that you qualify to be a member of ASEAN. So when I sought out my colleague after the bilateral meeting, he told me frankly, it's the skin color. ASEAN do not consider Papua New Guineans as Asians. So the quicker we appreciate that fact and move on, as they say, we move on into other stuff and bigger things. No, we will continue to remain a special observer. That's my honest opinion. The presentation today was taken from these sources, Donald Weatherby and Ralph Premdas and Jonathan Ritchie. So, Mr. Aguirre, I'll stop my lectures there and talk then. Welcome any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Hako, for giving us a detailed rundown of what happened and the factors involved in influencing our leaders to consider undergoing a major review of our first foreign policy and to frame a new strategic direction going forward with the active and selective engagement foreign policy. The floor is now open for questions, comments from attendees. We have close to 20 to 30 minutes before you begin your next class. Questions,
Is it okay
comments?
if I stop sharing, or have you got the references, everyone?
Yes, I believe they've taken note of that, and it will be available on the
Okay.
recording so they can.
Sure. All right then. Okay, then I'll stop sharing.
That'll be good. Questions, comments. I'll begin with a comment and then a question, just to warm things up before our audience put together their thoughts and come up with questions or comments. During our research on the Ramoniko CSR,
Yes, go ahead.
During our research on the Ramoniko corporate social responsibility, Deng Zhang and I, Dr. Deng Zhang from ANU, we found out that Somare has a really special relationship with China. He was the first leader to visit China in 1976, and then in 2002 he made an election promise in Medellin that, as per the article written by Mr. Patrick Medbob, he promised the American people that he will look for a foreign investor to mine the nickel and cobalt up at Krumukari. And then his National Alliance government, they were instrumental in inviting MCC, China Metallurgical Company, to come and take over from Islands Pacific. They took majority of the shares, 85%, and they took over the mine literally and started production in 2012. So we said, based on our analysis of the data that we've come across during our research, we concluded that the Ramunico mine project is a pillar of PNG's bilateral relationship with China. So what I would like to know from you is like from your own practical experience working in the government and observing what our leaders have done, in particular the late Michael Somare. What is your take on this? Do you think he was the man in between, the anchor of PNG China bilateral relations as we have discovered in our literature data so far? What is your practical observation?
Mr. Aguirre, he is he not only with China, he anchored a lot of our current the current bilateral relations we continue to enjoy with a number of countries. He was the anchor, you know, and well, I was smiling when you mentioned 2002 and three because in 2003 I commenced my posting in Beijing and I sat in a lot of those negotiations with MCC. 2003 to 4 before me and Ambassador Rai were part of those not really negotiations but part of those bilateral engagements we set in. So I had a very clear on the ground perspective of how this was going then. But then to look at it from a foreign policy level, it was after my it was in the last 5 years that I began to recall that, oh wow, you know the government invites MCC to set. I think that was MCC's China's first ever mining investment in Papua New Guinea. And yes, there's a lot of politics behind it after it was set up and the geopolitics and what. But it's set up there, and you will look at uh, the 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 scholarship, the student scholarship. Uh, China scholarships, which they put out. I think most of them are directed towards infrastructure and mining, extractive industry-based courses mostly. And I think now I understand. Now I can see why they are directing it mostly that way. Is just to cover their investments, in the country. And then you look at some other anchors, which the late say Michael had. You look at his relationship with personal relationship with the late Ratu Kamase Semara and our PNG's relationship with Fiji or the PIF for that matter, which is another story. But he had a lot of he knew how to talk, and in 2008, 2008 he was the prime minister then, and uh, I saw him front up first at a close distance preparing for his bilateral engagements, and he had all his advisors, Mr. Loma, the current MSG DG. He was there working in his office, and I just sat there listening to how they started briefing him. And he always gave back thoughtful comments. So how about this? You're saying it, but how about this? So they would go into bilateral meetings with the country's interest at heart, and that went for all the prime ministers after that. They went in to the bilateral engagements with a very, very high level of how they thought the bilateral engagement would shift in PNG's favor. And note very well that when we look back, this was in between the 1982 white paper and the 2024-2025 white paper, right in between. So it was really up to their instincts to see how the bilateral went. But that frank discussion between the foreign ministers of Papua New Guinea and Singapore was uh, uh, very frank indeed. And like I said, when I found out from my colleague later that no, it was because of skin color. So from there, I set my my thoughts that we would never be. We must stop this wish, this dream of becoming a member of ASEAN. Never not come up. And even when former Secretary Jack Carrico led the PNG delegation to Indonesia, Jakarta in 2013, December 2013, to meet with the Indonesian APEC team before they were disbanded, we had the opportunity the Indonesian APEC team organized an audience with then Foreign Minister Dr. Mati Natalegawa. But Dr. Mati's conversation was very nice. This is how he said, "You guys go back and tell my good friend Rimbing, no, because they were close, as Foreign Minister, they were in first name basis. So he said, go tell my good friend Rimbing, the idea of PNG becoming a member of ASEAN, we'll leave it first. Let's host APEC first and then see from there." Or in Pidgin, suppose you translate in Pidgin and by sound of them. Ting ting blue people joining ASEAN, losing past them. You may host APEC past them, Benny will look in brackets. And then we bring it further into brackets because in APEC, you only have 250 to 280 meetings to consider. ASEAN hosts more than 1,000 meetings a year. Look him. It's about a structure now. ASEAN hosts more than 1,000 meetings a year, and the meetings must be managed by an ASEAN division or secretariat from home. It cannot be managed by your missions abroad. Secondly, you must also have an ASEAN ambassador in Jakarta in addition to your bilateral ambassador. So plenty something, come up and then so you were looking at trying to host, become a member of ASEAN, and at the same time you're trying to host APEC, and you had a lot of challenges. No, how could you decide? How could you become a member of ASEAN when you only put in mid-range officers to lead your APEC hosting? According to the other economies, that was in a sense of trust and faith in aspiring for bigger things. It would have looked different if we had a high-powered foreign service team, right, organized in APEC 2018 with the lead up on to becoming a member of ASEAN straight in 2020. That was what my thesis suggested. Let's host APEC, and then as soon as with those wins, let's aspire for bigger stuff. But apparently, the powers that may be had other thoughts. I think there's some questions, Mr. Aguirre.
Yes, Samantha has a question. She asked, do you think, in your opinion, should we still maintain our special observer status with ASEAN?
Okay. I've never attended an ASEAN meeting, but I am told by my ASEAN colleagues around the region that PNG is only invited to attend the opening ceremony and the closing ceremony as a special observer. Plenary, no, God. The foreign ministers have used that to have bilateral meetings on or before the opening and closing ceremonies. So your answer is as good as mine. Should we continue? No, I would think that we should discontinue our intentions of becoming a member of ASEAN, but multiply our intentions and relations with those ASEAN member countries bilaterally. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. We go bilateral, and then we look at the 7 most powerful of them at the APEC, whom we engage 4 times a year at the working group senior officer level, and we engage twice a year at minister level, and we engage once a year, every year, without no absence at the leaders level. What better place is there than still aspiring to go to something which on man less do you join? And those are my thoughts. These are not some collective thoughts between me and others, but those are my personal thoughts, and I think I'll stand by them.
Mr. Ako, I saw in some of the documents that I have that the Chinese government scholarship started in 2004. Could you confirm or deny the claim that it started in the scholarship, Chinese government scholarship, and the relationship between the PNG government and the Chinese government to offer
It might be,
places?
I am not really aware. It might be true because when I arrived in 2003, there were no PNG students. There were a couple schooling around, but they went there on their own source of scholarship. It was only in 2004, and after it was only a few years after that that students started arriving, and the largest number of students arrived in 2005. And I was so happy over the moon when they arrived because I organized a 50-seater bus to go and get them. And I was looking at it from a selfish point of view. See, I had started the Beijing Brothers Rugby Club. I know what numbers here, look, Pillai. So when those 20 boys, Isaac Namaliu and all the others arrived, I was so over the moon that here we had a team to play, put numbers in. But then they all got spread out to all the universities around the country. But yeah, a big group, and they started arriving in droves after that, right up to now. So we can equate the statistics to China's bilateral support to this country, and look at the rate of debt support, and then you compare it with the request by them for support in other international fora, and how we are moving towards it. So it's a good thing that we are now working towards a foreign policy white paper, because with that white paper, it protects everyone who goes to international meetings. But you just leave the paper and go one by one on them and talk about the country's position. You don't research them, and that was the biggest hardest part of the uh, uh, international engagements during plenary sessions or during conversations. And it was a right decision by uh, uh, Chief Secretary Manasupe to recommend for now Chief Secretary Ivan Pomali to be the APEC senior officer, because he was coming from he was the IPA boss. So all the statistics on investment and trade, he had them. So when you met at the uh, uh, APEC senior official meetings, you don't read from pre-prepared statements from yesterday. That's political. That's for ministers to read. When you start a conversation like how we are talking, let's imagine this is a APEC senior official meeting. We're all in the plenary and we are discussing. So the chairman, Mr. Eger, is saying, okay, now I'll call upon Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea, you have the floor. That will be followed by Russia, and then Vietnam, and then Chile. So PNG sets the tone of the agenda. Everyone after that, you will notice that if you have an opportunity to attend an APEC senior official meeting, you will notice everyone's scribbling now. Everyone's scribbling, and that scribbling is evident when the later speakers start talking. So when they talk, let's say PNG talk 5 or 6 economists down the line, this is how you would say it. Okay, thank you, Chair. PNG supports the idea of corporate social responsibility, and as my Australian colleague had mentioned earlier, then you start comparing, and then you refer to your Russian colleague, and so that only happens when you start scribbling one, and you have an in-depth knowledge of that topic. So you come and it's all stuck here, and then you start comparing notes, and that is the real cooperation engagement. When you bring up at the senior officer level, when you bring a prepared statement from yesterday or last week someone wrote for you to read, mate, time conversation change, your prepared statement is out the window. And I've noted some APEC senior officers have froze. When there's PNG said, no, we go along with the consensus. It's because something will talk had changed there, because you didn't read, or you did not do any research, and now which brings us back to the academic and the practitioner. Now, if you had context in the academia, you would throw the paper to them to put in exact dates, data, and references, which by helping me talk. Suppose no them you block now, and it shows very badly. It shows very badly to the economy. See, when I was thrown into the hot seat because the senior official, previous senior official, was not attending for 5 or 6 times, and then when I was thrown to become the apex senior official, I had nothing to talk about. I had no. I was a liaison officer. My job was to sit at the back of the senior officer and go make her coffee or run him all photocopies or all that. So when they suddenly threw me, this is the first I remember very, very, very correctly. This is what I said. This was in Sendai, Japan, in 2010. This is what I said. Thank you, Chair. PNC has nothing much to say. But now that we are in conversation with you all now, I will assure you that I will have a lot to say the next time we meet. And because I took on that challenge and I challenged myself to I have to go back and start researching the agendas because the next SOM was just 2 months down the line. But you know, and then when I said that, the Japanese senior official was waiting for me when we walked out for lunch, and he shook my hands and he gave me a lot of face back because it was cultural now. You see, they knew that I was a liaison officer. The liaison officer in the structure is the last person down the line. You don't count him. But when they realized that this liaison officer had suddenly become a leader, leading a delegation up there, he must be special. So from then on, he had he was an elderly person. We became like a mentor, student and mentor. I could go up straight to him and say, Somche, how come we never received any briefing on this? And then he'll point me directly to so that it was contact making, and sometimes just speak the truth. When you speak the truth, because we must not pretend. All the economy sitting around there knew that we usually had nothing to say leading up to that particular SOM. And then at the end of the year, at the Leader Summit, when I put in a contribution on the leader statement to make an amendment, Kobayashi-san, who was first secretary here, Kobayashi came and told me, hey, Lahui, my APEC team are very, very impressed. No, not are very surprised. Why? Oh, you did a comment. You see, we never provided any comments or things on any papers which APEC released, ministerial statements. So we just said we are happy with it. But the fact that the PNG went and made a comment, it put Papua New Guinea into a different light. And the fact that we were going to host, it provided some good confidence and good points for us and support from the Japanese team. I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ako. Unfortunately, our time is up for today, this morning. You may continue on Friday. Friday, we will talk about Julius Chen. I think many of you have read his book, his autobiography, Playing the Game. So Mr. Ako and I will continue to look at various political leaders, foreign policy decision makers who have played an instrumental role in putting together our foreign policy and have led the country since independence. So this Friday, by me focus lo sa Julius Chan talk mo when something come up during all time some Prime Minister of the country. But once again, we thank you, Mr. Ako, very much for your time. It's a privilege and an honor to sit down and listen to you share your experiences and your opinion and point of views. And I'm sure the students and our viewers on Facebook as well as YouTube have continuously gained a lot from you over the last few weeks. And we hope to continue again this Friday and onwards. So, that's all for today.
My
Thank you
humble
everyone
honor.
for.
So always a pleasure. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. All right. Have a good
It-
week. See you guys on Friday.
One kind, you all have a great day today and see you all on Friday from 1:30 again.
Bye.
Bye for now.